Hello, and welcome to another episode of Creative Lifescaping. And I am excited to do this week at a little bit of a different time. I'm embracing the ambiguity, and we're going to do it in the afternoon today. And I'm so excited to bring on my guest, Kristen. So, Kristen is the founder of AVRO Creative, and she's a personal branding strategist. Her work helps driven women to exude confidence and stand out so that they get to the next level of their careers, which is really what drew me to her work and her style, because as you know, I like to do things a little bit differently as well. Kristen brings insight from her experience working with some of the world's biggest brands like Coca-Cola, Powerade, glaceau vitamin water to the exciting world of personal branding. Kristen's clients go on to become thought leaders, members of the C-suite, and receive top industry awards. When she's not writing or guiding people to build their brands, she's at home with her family in Calgary, probably trying to keep up with her kids, and I can totally relate to that. So please join me in welcoming, oh, my window here, Kristen, just a second. I've got this webcam and it like hides, so there we are. Welcome, Kristen.
Hi, everybody.
How are you?
I am great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me. I love your top, by the way. It's very pretty.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I thought it would be, awesome for our creativity discussion today.
It is. And I'm in like a very boring shirt, so I'm glad you wore something a bit more creative. You know, we talk about everyday creativity as things like picking an outfit. So you were creative to come on the Creative Lifescaping today.
Thanks.
So tell me, did you want to be a personal branding strategist when you were a kid?
No, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a psychologist.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to be. I remember, though, thinking about psychology and the years of schooling, and sometimes that it wouldn't necessarily be the fit that I really wanted. It might be hard to listen to people who have experienced difficult things all day. And so I really struggled with what I was going to be as a kid. And I remember being really comforted once by a teacher who said to my class, that the jobs that most of you will have when you grow up don't even exist yet. And I was like, wow, okay. So because I don't see this straightforward path of, the teacher, a lawyer, a doctor, these things that are really obvious and we know exist around us, I was really comforted by that. And I knew in that moment, I'm going to have a job that doesn't exist yet. And I do.
That's amazing. You know what? That is such a forward thinking. I'm not going to ask you when that was, but to me, it was like, you could be doctor, lawyer, teacher, any of those things. And I wanted to be a cinematographer at one point, but I was like clueless. And the World Economic Forum actually came up with a stat similar to that in 2017. They said 85% of the jobs in 2030 don't exist yet. And that was before the pandemic. So, I mean, how do you predict? So, wow, what kind of teacher was that? What subject did they teach?
You know what? I don't actually remember the teacher, the person who said it, the setting at all, but I do remember hearing it and really sort of like, when the time stops and you're like, okay, amazing. And then I could think about, well, what could that look like? And like you say, jobs in 2030 and beyond, I think the same thing, the jobs of the future, the jobs that my kids will have certainly don't exist today. Who knows what they'll be?
It's amazing what little things can impact us. Like I wonder out of the class of let's say there was 30 kids in that class, I wonder how many of them remembered or to impact them the same way as you, right? That's just a fascinating experience, and how that shaped, the confidence that you're following a path that will eventually get to where you're meant to go, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And it changed me so much instead of being fearful about, this looming end of high school that, is coming and this big change. And so many people are so excited. I'm definitely going into this program. I'm going to be this. And you feel like you're the only one who doesn't know, to suddenly being, I'm really excited about the unknown. I have a job that doesn't exist yet. It's going to be really cool.
I love that. Yeah, totally reframing things. There's so much anxiety in kids at school these days. That's such a great reframe because I bet you a lot of those kids that knew what they wanted to do got in 5-10 years and they were like, oh, this is not, I don't want to listen to people recreating trauma all day or whatever. They didn't really realize that part of it. So I think that's such a gift, that point of view that teacher gave you and helped you embrace to do that. I tell my kids that sometimes because my youngest son wants to be a YouTube star. And
so is my son.
Really? Oh,
yeah. He's 6 and he's like, I want a YouTube channel.
Well, my son's 13, so he's getting to the point where, anyway, so he wants to be a YouTube star, and then he says he doesn't need math. And then I'm like, well, actually, if you want to find out your conversion rate and all those funny, internet things, you need math. And he just like, and then I'm like, and how do you even know YouTube is going to exist in 5 years? Like, and he just gets angry. So it's not really, I don't impart that wisdom that he takes on like you did from your teacher, unfortunately. So tell me, I'm really curious, what happened then? Like, how did you choose which doors to open and walk through with that point of view?
Mm-hmm. I sort of, I still felt some anxiety and some stress, but, I just kept going forward and trying new things. And I think it, to the topic of creativity too, just sort of creating, moving forward, but being open to other possibilities and always kind of keeping doors open. So I had interesting life experiences. When I was 18, I had very major spinal surgery. I had a year-long recovery afterward. It really shaped a lot of who I am now. So I started going back to school, going into university programs sort of one at a time as I could. And then I went into communications because it was, they had taken general studies and renamed it communications, which is a terrible thing to do to communicators, unfortunately. But I ended up learning about communications, which is something I didn't know anything about, and falling in love with it, and the strategy behind it, the creativity behind it. It was sort of marrying these different sides of myself that I really liked. And I could certainly see, this was like this was pre-Facebook and, social media, but, blogging and websites were happening and that kind of a thing. So starting to just sort of see the world changing and all the digital stuff emerging too excited me as well. But also this sort of like business acumen that it was grounded into, I really, really appreciated. And so I just kept following my curiosity into that world. And so I graduated with a BA in communication studies and got to work in communications and marketing.
I love that. I think it's interesting when you say you like to balance the business and the artistic side, or what I don't know what word you use for communications, but it's kind of how I felt. Like, you feel like it sounds like you didn't have to choose. Like when I was in high school and I was interested in the arts and drama and stuff, I kind of felt like I had to choose like art or science. And now I know you don't have to, even if you are in a more scientific career. But it sounds like for you, you found like a sweet spot of a career that actually does blend the two.
Mm-hmm. I did. Yeah. And I felt, I felt the same way in high school too, that there was sort of this distinct, kind of two worlds, and I didn't feel like I existed in either of them. And I'm very much an introvert. I was very, very shy in high school. And so I could see the arts programs and those kids in there and going, that terrifies me. I just want to be a wallflower. And so I actually took fashion studies, and that sort of allowed me to follow my curiosity. But it was an option that was available at the time, and it was creative, and we talked about history, and I just loved it. And it was really my entryway into the world of branding. When I first really started to learn about branding and fashion houses and just those histories. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also fascinated about people's journey because, that Steve Jobs quote is, you can't connect the dots going forward, only backwards. And what I'm fascinated by is that your dot going backwards goes to a place where you didn't have, like most people have an idea, right, of where they want to go. And you kind of were able to just follow your curiosity, like you said. And I think so many of us put so much pressure on, I want to be or I want to do this, or I want to come across as this in the world when it comes to personal branding, but they don't leave themselves open to possibilities they haven't considered, I think. So thank you for sharing. That's so interesting.
Yeah. And I just that open to possibilities. I was doing a talk yesterday to a group, and I shared, I can't remember exactly how he says it, but it's Stevie Wonder who says, you prepare to go into the studio to cut a record or a song. You got it planned out, but you always have to leave room for the magic, for that creativity, that spark when you get other musicians in the room together, or just your energy, changes in that moment for that magic to happen.
I love that. Yeah, that blend of preparation, but also giving room for improvisation, right?
Yeah.
So were you considered, like, were you a creative kid? Like when you were young, were you one of those, like, painting and creating? Or tell me more about how you approach creativity as a kid and now.
Yeah, I think I approach it very differently now. I've really embraced it now, whereas before, I think I recognized I was creative and other people did too, but I knew it was a label that wasn't appreciated enough as compared to kids who were more maybe in more science and math, kind of those kinds of worlds. And so I remember, having, the recorder that you would get as a kid. I remember writing my own
What do they
recorder
call it?
songs. I'm sure my parents loved it.
The devil's flute, don't they call it? The devil's flute?
Yeah, that sounds accurate. And doing creative writing courses in elementary school and things like that. So I think I was creative, but I didn't see it as a strength. I always saw myself, I really need to, improve my math skills and my science. That wasn't my natural skill set. So I was always sort of looking to fill what I needed to. Whereas now I see there's such a need for creativity, and I'm such a LinkedIn junkie, as you know. And I know that a few years ago, well, probably 5 years ago now, creativity was the number one searched for skill on LinkedIn, meaning people are looking for creative people to work with in all industries. We need creativity now more than ever. We've always needed it. But now we certainly need it in this pandemic, post-pandemic world, wherever we are. And so now, and part of, my business name is AVRO Creative, which isn't the greatest name for my business, to be perfectly honest with you. It's not great for SEO. It doesn't say what I do in the name, which is personal branding, but it's also me really owning and taking ownership of this creativity. And so that's part of my creative journey to where I am now.
Yeah, I think you're not alone. I think so many people, that whole, I don't know if you've seen the TED Talk from Sir Ken Robinson on Do Schools Kill Creativity? And it's one of the most watched TED Talks in history. And he's since passed, I think last year, but an amazing man who basically, criticizes schools for doing this. Like the first thing that's cut is arts. The first thing that's, it's always considered frivolous or unimportant. And we're so geared to have a correct answer. And life isn't like that. I always say there should be like A, B, C, D, F, and M for maybe, like, because we're not teaching our kids to be able to sit in that ambiguity and be able to sit in the space of, I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's okay. It'll show up, So there's so many things about your comments there that I believe is true. And everybody's saying we need creativity, but I was speaking with who was I speaking with, a guest, and it was Karen. I've recorded an episode with Karen Fuster, which I have to stream sometime. And we were saying how creativity is still kind of a bad word in business. Like, do you think that like World Economic Forum, LinkedIn, McKinsey, they're all talking about creativity, but when you talk to C-suite or business owners, like, creativity seems random and a little threatening. Would you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, I do. I think what people want, especially, in uncertain times, but all the time, they want certainty. And in a business, you have investors, you have all these stakeholders, you're looking for certainty, you're looking for the right answer, the right decision to move forward. And living in that uncertainty, that ambiguity, like you said, it is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's really uncomfortable to sit in that in any kind of aspect of our life. And then when you add, there's money on the line now too, there's eyes on us. I think people recognize creativity, especially after it's happened and it's really celebrated and lauded and everything. But But in that moment, you have to create space for creativity, I believe. You
Oh
have to
yeah.
allow for that ambiguity.
Mhm.
You have to allow for people to spit out ideas and bad ones to get to good ones.
Yeah.
And so I think people say, yeah, we need creativity, but the discomfort and the ambiguity that comes with it, they don't want. They don't understand it's part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's like words of wisdom right there of they want creativity once they see it. It's kind of like the 6-pack abs, like you're not going to get them from sitting watching TV and eating Doritos as much as I've tried. But nobody wants to put in that work. I mean, and especially like with something like 6-pack abs, at least that's the end goal. But with creativity, you're like, I don't even know what could come out of all of this, like spaghetti against the wall and all this kind of things. And yeah, it can be very difficult for sure.
Yeah, there's certain processes, right? Like if you do the 6-pack abs program, if you do enough sit-ups and you cut some calories, you're gonna get the abs probably, right? There's a certain level of guarantee that happens there, but with the creativity, we don't know where it's going to take us. And there's all these dependencies to it.
Yeah, it's like doing sit-ups, and you could get buff arms or buff legs or calves or maybe toes. Like, it's kind of that kind of thing. I love it. So I just want to say for anybody joining us a little bit late, I'm interviewing Kristen. And I forgot to ask you how to pronounce your last name. Is it Dyck?
It's Dyck.
Okay.
It's the bad word.
No, it's a good word. I love it. So I'm here with Kristen Dyck. Because I always forget to ask people pronunciation of their names before. And then I'm like, oh, I should have asked. So I'll go with the ambiguity, risk of failure. So one of the things that you do, Kristen, with people is you help them to use personal branding as a vehicle to get a better job and better career. So maybe tell us a little bit about what you do. And I'm going to share some of your link to your website here. And maybe how does creativity fit in there? Like if you consciously engage that?
Yeah, well, I think creativity started in the idea for my business, in my process that I now use over and over and over again repeatedly. And so what I do is, like you said, I work with driven women. I help them reach their career goals using personal branding. And so personal branding is sort of like what I was saying before. It's rooted in branding, these proven things that we know work. We can see it replicated over and over around the world with different brands. But how do we apply that to personal branding and to individuals? And so there certainly is a lot of creativity. I was with another group this morning, helping them create what I call your personal brand statement. And so it's all about how you talk about yourself in a different way, in a way that's more compelling, more true to what you do to provide value at your company. And for a lot of them, there was it's for everyone, it's challenging, but it's sitting in that ambiguity of there's no right answer. It's not like a math equation, like, when you're going to get there, that kind of a thing, what the end is. And so that can be really, really hard. You want to know this is the right answer. And so I've got a framework. I know this framework works. The beauty is that it's not concrete. It can evolve with you throughout your career, but we do need to be creative and look at different approaches to how we're going to talk about ourselves and what others think of us, what others need to know about us, and including all of those different aspects and bring them into this brainstorming process. And so it got a lot of my creative juices going because it was like rapid fire drafts of brand statements, and I was giving instant feedback. So it was a lot of fun.
Is that where you're in your happy place, is like, helping to problem solve and figure people's brand statement type of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I looked up and our hour was up. So
that's great. It knows that when you're in flow like that, it means that you're doing the right thing. So you're waiting for the right signal to come to you, obviously has been helpful for your success. Mm-hmm. So I'm as you're saying this, I can empathize because I'm writing a book right now and I'm supposed to be choosing the title. Everything hinges on the title, the ISBN, the cover design, everything. And am so struggling, and this, I would have the same problem with my brand statement. So maybe you can help me balance this. So I consider myself fairly creative, although I'm kind of rooted in the data. I'm not really artistic, but I'm pretty good at like thinking outside the box, so to speak. But it's killing me to have a title and a subtitle that's more more boring. So like my title is tentatively The Reluctant Creative, which has many different opinions. Some people hate it because they say reluctance negative, and some people like it. Anyway, I've decided on that one. So don't say you don't like it, because I don't want to hear it.
I
But
love it.
my subtitle, like I did so much research on like all of the books. It's like The Surprising Secret to, The 5 Habits to, The Power of. And I'm like, oh no, it's all the same. And they kind of don't say much. The power of like living a great life, or the 5 secrets to unleashing your life was one of the ones. But I was chatting with someone in a self-publishing group, and they were like, look, reluctant creative is also already a bit of a thinker. So you need to have it something where people can understand, because otherwise it's too random. So in my long rambling question to you is, how do you balance this? Like, I want to be unique and stand out and show people how different I am, but also I need to be not so different and stand out that I'm not going to trigger a threat response in them, right? Like, tell me about that, if that's a thing.
I think because you're when you're talking about them and they, it says you've got an audience in mind for your book. And so I would look at it as, what do they need from you? Because you can't please everyone. And this is part of what we say with personal branding. Like, you can't get everything that you do into one sentence, which is what your brand statement is. Just like you can't get all the greatness that you're going to unleash on people in your book into one subtitle of the title.
That's the problem, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it is a problem. So what do you need them to know in that glance of a moment when they're at Indigo or they're at their local bookstore, that's going to hit them and go like, oh, I need that book.
Yeah.
And so I think I hear what you're saying, because there is a lot of that pressure to do the 5 steps for this, or, things like that, because you see that blog that with that title or something, you're like, I need to know those 5 steps, but it could be, a before and after statement or something like that, so that they can see their own transformation that will happen after they read your book. Something like that. I like what your friend said though about the main title, The Reluctant Creative, is a bit of a thinker. Like, there's a lot of syllables happening there. So you do want to keep the subtitle pretty simple.
Okay, well, maybe I will. So the subtitles I was considering, sorry, I didn't mean to turn this into all about me, but this is helpful for branding probably too, right? Like, so some of the 3 subtitles I kind of settled on was, unleash, like what you need to do when you unleash your life, something like that, because I'm a veterinarian. So it was kind of a play on that. Or nobody really cares what you do anyway, so you might as well do what you want, which is very long. And then the 5 habits to expand your comfort zone. And I think based on that, a lot of people said they love the nobody cares about you, but I think they're the people who wouldn't necessarily need my book. They're the people who are already risk takers. People who need my book are like needing some push to kind of push them. So I think I'm going to do the 5 habits and then use them more, because I wanted to bring in I hope that it's funny. And I was trying to incorporate that in this subtitle, but I think I'm going to have to do that in the blurb. So I don't know.
Yeah, I do like the 5 habits piece, because I think, those people that need you, they need that. Okay, I see there's a step-by-step process here.
True.
I need to know what that process is.
So thank you. That's excellent. I love confirmation bias is my favorite thing. So, so tell me how you would use that. Like when someone's like, well, I want to do this, but do that. How do you help people? So there's a few questions. I'm going to try to roll into one. Is how I present myself to the world is maybe not how people perceive me. So how do you tease out like the things that you're doing are more habitual and they're not really representing yourself, versus how do you want to show up? And then how do you figure out those words? I mean, I know you said you had kind of a framework, but how do you coach someone through that's like, maybe you can't do this in the time we have, but generally speaking, if I came to you and I said, well, I want to work at a Fortune 500 company, and I show up in ripped jeans and a, whatever, mohawk, maybe that's okay. I don't know. But how do you guide people through that process anyway?
Yeah. So we start exactly what do you want? Where are you going?
Mhm.
I want to know short term, but also long term, what we're building towards for someone's personal brand. What's the long term vision that you have for your career too?
Mhm.
And working backwards from that. And so recognizing that we are all very multifaceted people. And so the people I was on the call with this morning, they do a lot within their one role. They're doing lots and lots of different things, and that was a really common thread among them. They prided themselves in being a really lean team,
Mhm.
and I do see that a lot. And I also see people who want to bring all of themselves to their personal brand. Maybe this doesn't reflect enough that what I do outside. I'm really into this activity as well.
Mhm.
But we were looking at, what do people need to know about you just to start a great conversation, so that it's that entry point, it's that gateway. With a personal brand, we're gonna create a whole bunch of touch points. So touch point being, this is a touch point between you and your audience, and myself and your audience too.
Mhm. Mhm.
As is, if you have an email list, if you create a post, you do a talk, those are all touch points and ways that people are going to get to know you better and on a deeper level.
Mhm.
But what we do want to have for, especially the start of your personal brand, we do want to keep it pretty focused and
Mhm.
straightforward. And then as people get to know you and your brand, then you're going into a little bit more detail. You can broaden things a little bit. But if you throw everything at them all at once, they're going to, it's like the
Yeah.
fire hose analogy.
Yeah.
You can't drink from the fire hose kind of thing. You want to keep it really focused first and allow people to go broad.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm the fire hose tendency, so that's something that I have to work on. I just want to mention too that you have a free guide here that you shared, and I shared the link in the comments there. So that's maybe somewhere where people can start to think through some of
Yeah.
these questions. Is it?
Yeah, that's right. It's a free guide. It's on how to develop your personal brand. And the way that I intentionally talk about personal branding is it's how you're communicating your value
Mm.
to all your different stakeholders, to your boss, to a job recruiter, to your network on LinkedIn. And so that's a guide, a step-by-step process that you can use to do it. And it's got boxes for brainstorming and bringing creativity into.
Can I start at step 10? That's usually what I do with ADHD. Actually, if it's 10 steps, I usually start at 5. That's usually what I do. Drives my husband crazy. So,
Yeah.
I mean, some of the things you talked about is like sharing your value, and that we're multifaceted people. And I see with people who are hesitating to use their creativity, one of the biggest barriers is, first of all, fear of their own judgment, but also fear of judgment from others. So when you're working with people with a personal brand, do you ever find people like have a mask, and like, it's not representing who they are, like you said, because they're too afraid to say, well, I like to go thrifting on the weekends. I think people think that's dumb or something, right? So
Mhm.
maybe tell me a little bit about it. How do you approach people that have that, or does that happen? And then how do you manage that?
Yeah. And certainly, like, some of my women, or some of my clients, they're in tech startups, they're in emerging industries and things like that. And so the idea of creativity is more embraced in those environments.
Mhm.
And then in some more, traditional environments, it's not as embraced. So what I talk to those people about is helping people understand what results from creativity.
Mm.
So, because creativity, like, unfortunately, that's what they're looking for. But you can
Mhm.
also bring the fact that, yes, it oftentimes creates and allows for great results and everything, but it also helps to support a strong workplace culture.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
you can support an environment that people actually want to show up to
Mhm. Yeah,
and,
I love that.
bring themselves to work.
Well, and I always say that creativity is contagious. So if you have someone who is, in an environment, if you start sharing like a little, like you said, a little bit at a time, it pushes the needle. And what I find is when I was embarrassed about sharing some of my creative things, especially with my vet community, once I started doing that, people come back to me 1, 2, 3 months later and say, you know what, when you said you had this jewelry business, I thought, well, why shouldn't I do that thing I've wanted to do, even though I thought it was weird. So I wonder
Mhm.
if that just helps to nudge that culture a little bit more as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And there's no reason that you can't bring some of that personality into, on LinkedIn. it's not like we just have that one touch point. I think you want to be really focused on things like your headline and things like that. But throughout, you can do a post, or you can have something in your about section about that's something more personal that people do feel that more personal or deeper connection to you about. Sort of like in my bio, I talk about how I run around chasing after my kids in Calgary.
Yeah.
Other people can kind of, there's like that, they might visualize it. A lot of people can connect to that and relate to that. And so those pieces can go a long way, and they can be, as brief and subtle as you want them to be too. But it's another connection point for someone to talk to you
right
about.
To find that common ground, because people feel that they're in, somewhere where they can be understood and where you feel connection.
Yeah.
Great. Wow, this has gone by so fast.
I know. Wow.
But I don't want to forget, because I've forgotten in the past. So we are at the truth and dare section, and I'm pretty sure you chose truth. So can you please share a story where you felt a bit silly or embarrassed, and maybe talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So there's a few. I'm pretty clumsy, to be honest with you. And I'm left-handed, so I'm like walking around a right-handed person's world, I feel like some days. But I think back to being embarrassed in my previous job when I was in communications. And I've told this story many, many times, but I was really embarrassed and mortified when I wasn't getting the traction in my career that I wanted. And I had a conversation with my boss about it. And she said to me, well, you do great work, but no one knows who you are. And that was really embarrassing and uncomfortable to hear. But it actually changed the trajectory of my career. And it's why I started AVRO as well, because I made a choice in that moment to, again, I didn't know I was building my personal brand. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I needed to change course. And so I did. I took that discomfort and continued to more discomfort. I got into public speaking and just started even just speaking within the office, which was also endlessly embarrassing and uncomfortable because, like I said, I'm an introvert. It's not my nature to, talk in front of people. Yeah. So I've just sort of followed, and I keep doing that now too.
That's great. I just love that from your boss. Well, nobody knows who you are. Like, isn't that kind of your job too? Like, as my manager. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. But but sometimes those uncomfortable moments are what launches us into the discomfort that helps us grow. And I think as a society, we're very accustomed to this complacency of comfort, and it's really not doing anything for us in the long run, but it's so alluring. But, doing things like, you might have thought, I just don't public speak. That's just not who I am. And you challenge that, so that even within personal branding, what we think we are and what we can be are maybe not always necessarily the same thing. Because if I want to get to a destination and it requires me to do some things that I think I'm not, then, I'm going to have to just try. Right. And
exactly.
Be willing to fail. Right.
Yeah. And be willing to fail and be willing to be creative and try different things.
Yes. Yeah. Green creativity is facing ambiguity and failure every time. So I wanted to say thank you so much, Kristen, for sharing these great pearls of wisdom and giving me feedback on my title and some ideas about how, and that was my problem. I was trying to I wanted to sound funny, and I wanted to make sure it sounds science-based, and I want to make sure that it's for people who think they're not creative. So it can't sound like a creativity book. And like, I was an impossible ask. So thank you for for enlightening me of just like trying to filter down like what's the thing they need and being a little bit more focused. So I am definitely going to check out your guide for communicating your value, which is in the chat. And I look forward to hearing more about personal branding and seeing you speak as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me. It was so great. I love this conversation.
Thank you. You know what? I love these conversations because it's like a dedicated time for me to talk to people in depth about things that I wouldn't necessarily maybe schedule a time for. So this is completely selfish. If nobody ever watches these, I'm just enjoying learning so much from these conversations. And I learned so much from you today, Kristen. Thank you so much.
Oh, likewise. Thanks so much, Carolyn. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. And next week we have Kelsey Ramsden, who is CEO of Mind Cure Health. So a very disruptive industry, and look forward to that. Thank you.